Thanks for joining us again on the Clive Barker Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to the works and worlds of Clive Barker. This is episode 151, Hellraiser 30th Anniversary Celebration. Jose Leitao, and I am Ryan Danhauser, are joined by Danny Stewart, who worked on the Leviathan Documentary and is a rabid Hellraiser fan. This episode is full of Hellraiser news, memories, and thoughts from you, our listeners. And there's a little Easter egg at the end if you stick with us. One of the big news that we talk about is the new Hellraiser novel with a story by Clive Barker and written by Mark Miller. It's called Hellraiser the Toll. Well, hey, welcome back to the Clive Barker Podcast. We've got Jose.
Hi. Hey, everybody.
And I'm Ryan. And our guest is Danny Stewart.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Danny. So you've been a contributor for our podcast for a while now. You've been friends with us on Facebook for like 3 years. And tell a little bit to our listeners who you are and what was your connection to Leviathan Documentary?
Yeah, hi, everybody. My name's Danny Stewart. And basically, I contributed to the Kickstarter to Leviathan. And I'm just a massive Hellraiser fan and a massive fan of film, and also an actor and producer, and just believe in keeping film alive. And Hellraiser especially holds a dear place in my heart. That franchise particularly. I mean, my dad brought me a mask when I was a Hellraiser pinhead mask when I was about 10 years old.
Wow.
When we were on holiday, and I remember seeing it. And just like as you guys did, and everybody that has seen it, my fascination. I was a bit like Chenard. I have to see, I have to know.
Yeah.
I think just my fascination with Pinhead, the image, and then I saw the film, but it was a bit more deeper than that, and I was perhaps a bit too young to understand the whole meaning and the idea of the film until much later. And the ideas are endless. I mean, Clive Barker's mind is he's just one of a kind.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, for sure. And you've also been in this smaller, shorter film that's been done by some of the same people who've done Leviathan, right? Called The Offer. That involves a bunch of Hellraiser actors. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, I only tell you, I don't really want to say much because I can't wait for people to see it. But all I can say is Chris. I can't give enough praise to everyone involved, and Chris Griffiths and Gary Smart and the writer Neil Morris. They've just done. It's just incredible. They're just a bunch of amazing guys. It's all down to them.
Absolutely.
They're just amazing. I think that they've got a real future ahead of them.
They're great documentary makers too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all of them. What they've done so far is just amazing. I mean, I'm glad to be part of it, but they're really they're the masters behind it all, really. And I've just helped out as much as I can, really.
Yeah, that's great. We did provide a lot of support in spreading around the link of the Kickstarter when it was coming out, and we got Gary Smart on the podcast a couple of times, and we've covered extensively the Leviathan documentary. So I recently received the book, Leviathan, the documentary book that they made. So I haven't opened it yet because I want to make a little unboxing video. But definitely something we're going to cover in the podcast in the near future.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can't wait to receive that book. I mean, again, the work that's gone into it, just amazing. I mean, I know that they will have such sights to show us.
Good one.
Gary.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But, I mean, I've seen pictures, people have posted on Facebook and online, and just how the layout of the book and the photos and the pictures and behind the scenes and the sort of anecdotes of the stories that are from Leviathan. And I think also Gary, he's included so much more. Gary Smart has included so much more into the book as well, I think. And I know that he did he did another book about Return of the Living Dead, which I've got, and that's it's quite similar in kind of style, and I think Gary Smart, the work he's done is just amazing, really. I know I keep praising it, but they're documentary makers, and just everything they do to keep film alive.
Yeah. And they've also done a documentary about Fright Night, and they were working on another one about RoboCop called RoboDoc, and a lot of good documentaries from them.
I can't wait to see RoboDoc.
Yeah, it's just too bad that Weller was not available to be in that documentary, although everybody else was apparently.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to see the bits on parts 2 and 3, and the video game and the comic and the whole sort of cultural phenomena of the of RoboCop itself.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I think the original is a true classic. And the funny thing is, Hellraiser and RoboCop, and they're all like 30 years old now. I mean, as I say, Hellraiser's just had its 30th anniversary as well. So.
Sure, that's a great segue into the whole premise of this episode, which is, where were you in September 10th, 1987? And hopefully you were in the Cannes Film Festival, because that was the first time that Hellraiser was screened, was at the Cannes Film Festival on May 13, 1987. Then there was the Prince Charles Cinema on Leicester Square. I hope I'm pronouncing this properly. And
sure.
Yeah, and they played Hellraiser in the UK in September 11, I think, just before the wider UK release on the 12th. So, and that's what we're celebrating right now, the 30th anniversary of Hellraiser.
Today we're talking about the Hellraiser 30th anniversary, and kind of gathering our thoughts, and what do we think about Hellraiser, where it's going, what's been happening. I think lately there's been a ton of Hellraiser news, which has been amazing. I guess we've got Arrow just released a steelbook of the Hellraiser original Hellraiser soundtrack by my mind is blank. Christopher Young, thank you. It's very early, and so that's cool. And then on top of that, there's the steelbook that Arrow just released for Hellraiser. Did either one of you guys order that?
Yeah, I pre-ordered it actually. I mean, I know that. I think I believe it's next week or the week after. They've got a premiere of it. A premiere of Hellraiser in Prince Charles Cinema, and they're selling some of the I think LPs, or they're selling some of the they're re-releasing the Christopher Young soundtrack.
Yeah.
I know that they're selling some there, like a remastered kind of version, and I think I'll be definitely buying one of those if I can make the screening. I mean, I pre-ordered it anyway, but if I get it there, I'll cancel the pre-order and.
I wonder how the Steelbook disc is different from the version that we're getting that we got in the Scarlet box.
I believe that David Sharp told us that it's similar to the disc 1 of the Scarlet box.
Oh, okay. It's
I think
it's a little bit of a repackaging anniversary edition.
Yeah. I think it's just the same with with the extras, and it's just it's just to celebrate the first anniversary, just kind of new artwork. Yeah. I mean, I still get it as a collector's item.
Sure, I think that the Region B edition, the one that you're talking about, I think they're already sold out. They sold out a few days after announcing.
Oh, they did, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, what does that tell you? How the how strong the film is after 3 years. I mean, the love of it.
Yeah, it tells me there's a lot of fans out there buying this thing.
Yeah.
And luckily they're doing a Region A version as well for America. So there's no problem there. America will also get their own Steelbook version of it.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, that's brilliant. As long as you guys can get it as well,
Yeah, absolutely.
And then on the 13th, there was a 30th anniversary screening in Arlington, Texas, and the pinhead Paul T. Taylor from the Hellraiser movie that nobody's seen was there to celebrate.
That's great. I think he's really He's really going for the whole promotional thing about being the Hell Priest and Pinhead. I think fans are still holding some.
Paul Taylor.
Yeah,
Paul Taylor. Yeah. Oh no, that's Paul Taylor, isn't it?
Yes.
Paul T. Taylor, yeah. So I think he's just really trying to get into this, and I wish him all the best. I guess the fans will only really start taking to his Pinhead after they are able to see the movie, right? I mean, it's hard to make a judgment about it before we see Hellraiser Judgment.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying. Yeah. We've got to reserve our Hellraiser Judgment, or withhold Hellraiser Judgment, just like Dimension is withholding Hellraiser Judgment.
Yeah. But that's great. I mean, that's great that he's meeting the fans and stuff. So more power to him.
Yeah. He's the only one promoting this movie.
That's right.
I mean, nobody else even. He doesn't have a clue when it's coming out or if. I mean, it kind of has to, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was coming out. I mean, there's been no trailer or there's not really been any update, except apart from Paul. But I was sort of thinking it's just an October release, or kind of around Halloween time.
That'd be great. That'd be a great strategy. I think
they did that last time. I think it was around Halloween with Revelations. Mm-hmm. I think it was like either Halloween or November that it came out. I'm trying to remember because it was right before our first episode when I was still planning, for the start of the podcast.
Right.
Right.
I don't remember exactly the month, but I think you're right.
2011. Yeah. So, and then we've also got the Hellraiser Anthology Volume 2, which we got to read a pre-release review copy, and it's amazing. Oh, wow. Yeah, the Hellraiser anthology comics are really neat. It kind of harkens back a little bit to the old epic comics, but they're even a little more extreme and more free to do what they want.
Did you get to see Anthology Volume 1, Danny? I know that was kind of a limited release.
I mean, I still need to buy it. Okay. I mean, the artwork looks incredible, and the reviews I've read, they've just been top notch. The 5-star reviews. So I mean, I can't wait to actually to read it and to see it again.
Right.
So and they have, I think, right now for Volume 1, you can get a paperback copy or the
hardcover?
the online one.
Oh, the PDF, right?
Right. Yeah, I think the hardcover sold out.
Yeah, I can do that. But sometimes I like. I'm sure you, as you guys do, I just like owning it as well. In physical form as well. It does look. It looks really good. I mean, I suppose you guys have read it and have a copy.
We got a review PDF, so we were able to read it, and we talked about it on episode 150. So go listen to that if you haven't.
And as we're recording this, it's debuting right now at Son of Monsterpalooza in the horror convention in California.
That's right. So go check out the Clive Barker crew booth over there at Son of Monsterpalooza. It's taking place from September 15 to the 17th, and I'm sure they have a lot of cool stuff about Clive Barker that you won't be able to buy anywhere else.
Yeah. And then, of course, another thing that another Hellraiser thing we did recently was we had a podcast episode where we interviewed Paul T. Taylor. That was episode 147, so a little while back. But that's been, for viewership, that's been one of our more popular ones recently. Makes me think maybe we should be doing more interviews again.
Well, let's try. Let's aim for a few more. Maybe get Mark Miller to come in.
Yeah, I mean, actually, since for you guys, I mean, how, 30 years on for Hellraiser, I mean, how do you guys feel about the franchise? Where it's gone?
Well, do you want to start first, Ryan?
Yeah. So I think for me, my first introduction to Hellraiser, actually, I saw Nightbreed first, and that got me really into Clive Barker, and I started reading, and I read. I was a little afraid of Hellraiser because it was, I was not allowed to see horror movies when I was a kid, so I read Hellbound Heart first before I saw Hellraiser, and I had a bunch of friends that we would play Dungeons and Dragons and stay up all night and rent a bunch of movies, and I kept trying to get them to rent Hellraiser because I hadn't seen it, and yeah. one I got sort of outvoted, and a guy said, "No, we'll do Hellraiser, but we'll do Hellraiser 2 because that's the better one," and so he rented Hellbound, and so I saw Hellraiser 2 first. Which luckily they've got a pretty long Hellraiser 2 has a pretty long synopsis in it of the first movie, so you don't miss out.
Like a recap of what had happened.
Yes, yeah. So so I did see Hellraiser 2 first, which is kind of a crazy. It has a lot of good lines in it, but I was like, whoa, these Cenobites are cool, and now they're dead. So. So then I later on my own I rented Hellraiser and I copied it. So originally I sort of pirated it onto VHS and later a little later I bought the Laserdisc. But at that point if I had never rented it and copied it, I wouldn't have had that awful thing at the end. I think this might only be on the American copy where they superimpose over the credits this guy that's like selling tote bags and posters and hats and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he's like, the Hellraiser thermos, perfect.
Oh yeah. I've seen that on the Anchor Bay DVD set that has Hellraiser 1 and 3. Yeah, 1, 2, and 3. They have all that promotional stuff. As well.
The Hellraiser satin jacket.
Yeah, that's right. I've seen it because I think on the like they had like a box set here.
Yeah,
I think it was Anchor Bay as well, and it was like a hidden feature, on the
and there was a lady talking about her cat and stuff like that.
That's right.
Yeah, and there's like a little like Halloween, Halloween store spider. Mm-hmm. And they put the hat on top of the spider, it goes over as like a braid. Yeah. So then I really liked it, and it helped to have read the book first, so I wasn't too scared to watch it because I'd read the book, so I had a pretty basic understanding of what was going to happen in the movie.
Oh right, that's funny you say that because. I saw the film first, but I remember. I saw it it was around the year 2000. Mm-hmm. My cousin sort of babysitted me, and I made her. I'd known about it long before. My dad had bought me the mask, and he had some Fangoria magazines, and which I had. They had like Hellraiser 3. Behind the scenes and stuff like that, and I think it's where my obsession began with it. And I remember, yeah, my cousin got the DVD, and I remember watching it, and I was in love with it. But she was behind the couch the whole time, and I was just I was like a kid in the candy store, and I was just in love with it. I was a bit too young to understand, like I said before, the meanings behind it, and But I think that hit me after a couple of years when I understood it a bit more. And I remember I was in because I remember in secondary school when I was about 13 years old. I remember I had a copy from the library, my local library, the Hellbound Heart, Clive Barker's novella. Mm-hmm. And I went to a Catholic school, so it was pretty. They were pretty. They wouldn't have liked what I was reading, but very strict. I remember in English, I was reading the book, and we had to read out like bits from the book we were reading. I remember I was reading the Hellbound Heart out in class, and my teacher wasn't too happy. He was like, "What kind of filth is this? You mustn't be reading this, I just remember I was in a lot of trouble, and she's like, "You better choose another book because some of the language and the description, and I think out of the whole class, everyone was sort of they probably looked at me the same way everybody looks at Clive Barker, you know.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah, right. Well, hopefully you got some people into Hellraiser that day.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I had gotten to. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the book cover I had, it had the image of Pinhead, and it was the man and woman. They were sort of holding each other, and it's very sexual.
That's the one I have too. I have those British covers from the paperbacks. They were just very detailed and had lots of. They had like this frame around the painting.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I love those. The HarperCollins one. I first heard about Hellraiser thanks to my brother Raoul, who was 7 years older than me. I think that the Cenobites were some of the most striking monsters I had seen up to this point because they were kind of sophisticated in their own way. They weren't mindless brutes like Jason or mute like The Shape or wisecracking jokers like Freddy Krueger. I think Clive once said, and I'm going to paraphrase here, that they could recite Shakespeare or the Bible, albeit backwards. So they're very stylish. I get.
No, I think that's completely right. I mean, I think you really hit the nail on the head there. That's
the nail on the head, right?
Yeah, nail on the head. Yeah, no pun intended.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think you're completely right. I think they were head and shoulders above all those kind of horror slasher icons. I mean, he had, Clive Barker's the creation and what Image Animation had done. That everyone involved, they had really brought. A whole completely new idea and vision and creation.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, as you said, it was like a Shakespearean gravitas.
Yeah.
It was a bit like that.
Yeah. So,
sorry.
For example, I mean, look at what Jason wears. It's just this ratty old costume. Sometimes it's The Shape is wearing like a monkey suit. Not a monkey suit. What do you call it in English?
Overalls.
Overalls. Yeah, thank you. And then Freddy Krueger has a ratty sweater, a green and red sweater. And then the Cenobites have these amazing designs for their outfits. Created by Jane Wild Goose and made of real leather, sewn on and through their skin. Great costume work there by Rosemary Sylvester, who was interviewed for the Leviathan documentary. And they were classified in Weave World as the surgeons from beyond. So I think that the thing about the Cenobites is that in their service to Leviathan, they can change you inside as well as outside. And I don't mean like your innards. I mean they seem to alter people in very metaphysical ways. They change your memories. They change your personality. They release deeper aspects of your id, changing
personality and your exactly. I mean, there's a good book actually by Paul Kane, the Hellraiser films and their legacy, and that really delves deep into the whole sort of Cenobitic, as you were saying, the Leviathan, the way it changes an individual. It's when they get turned into a Cenobite. Yeah, like Chenard. He was a kind of he was a doctor, and and he used that. If I remember, he used that drill at the beginning of the film, to do some brain surgery.
Yes,
and later on he also gets turned into the very thing that the device that he was using on the patients in some form of way. That kind of that penis-like drill that was going into the back of his head was the kind of device that he was using on his patients.
That's right. So, he turned his brain into a nice smoothie.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and going back to the sequels, I think I was sort of a Clive Barker purist. So I had gone to see him in a signing for The Thief of Always, and he had a Q&A at that time. This was like 91, and somebody had asked him about Hellraiser 3, and he said, you should never make 3 of any movie. And he said, they did, Hellraiser, and he said like Alien 3, look at that one, or in Return of the Jedi, they just blew up the Death Star again. And he said, well, they're trying something new with this next one. We'll see how that goes. Talking about Bloodline. But at that point I had kind of felt like I was going to just try to, I otherwise I'd go crazy. I was just going to try to focus my collection on stuff that Clive Barker wrote or, wrote and directed himself, and not so up until we started this podcast, I loved Hellraiser. I had mixed feelings about Hellraiser 2, and I really didn't like any of the other ones. And I've kind of given them a second chance here because of this podcast, and have sort of dived a little deeper. But up until that point, I was just not a fan of Hellraiser sequels at all.
I mean, do you know? It's fun. I mean, see, I know everyone loves the original, and it is a true classic. And the second one is to some even better than the original, if not its equal. I agree, it is. But to me, the Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth's always been a personal favourite. Okay, it's not. It doesn't touch the first two, but I've always loved it because it has a charm to it. I know it's not as gothic or as dark, but I think because I love Pinhead and I love the whole backstory, and I love it. It still has deeper elements than most horror films. As you said, it wasn't, as you said earlier, about the kind of the Michael Myers, the Threadies, the kind of slasher films. I think still Hellraiser 3 had an intelligence that most of the genre of the films of that time. It's still better than most of those films, and I think I love the whole kind of war is hell aspect, and the history of Pinhead, and the kind of Jekyll and Hyde aspect of his character, and also that we all do have dark sides in us. And I think Pete Atkins wrote a devilishly good screenplay with Part 3. I mean, I know everyone says that he has those kind of those Freddy type one-liners, but no, I don't believe he does. I think the Pinhead as a character, the way Doug delivers the lines, and it's a kind of Shakespearean gravitas that he gives to the role.
Well, I think the one-liners didn't come from Pinhead; they came from the other Cenobites. Right, I think that's right. Yeah, I think those guys are the ones that ruined Hellraiser 3 for me. I mean, I thought Pinhead was fine. I liked all the rest of the movie, but I really didn't like the design or the personalities of the other Cenobites.
No, I mean, I can definitely understand that. And I think that's the problem people have with Part 3. It's the Cenobites, And I personally would have loved to have seen the original Cenobites included in Hellraiser 3 as well. I mean, I tell you what, I would have loved if that they were part of the Pillar of Souls, and you had the human alter egos of those characters, and you had the human alter egos, doing battle with their own Cenobite characters, or in the same way, Doug Elliott Spencer. But maybe that would have been too much, or and they were just trying to concentrate on the one, the lead villain, Pinhead.
It seems like so many ideas, It seems like public opinion is kind of with me on that, because those Cenobites never showed up in anything again.
Well, Ryan, I mean, even Pinhead admits to that when he says they're handmade, Joey, a shadow of my former troops. He admits it, but I like the designs. I mean, sure, J.P. Monroe is kind of like a very hammy kind of Cenobite. It's like, relax, baby, it's better than sex.
None of the other Cenobites ever talked like that. That's that felt disingenuous to me.
That's true, but at the same time, go ahead, Danny.
Sorry, Jose and Ryan. No, I think as well. I think Pete Atkins Cenobite, the barbed wire Cenobite. I think he was quite good. I like that design. Quite like that design. I think that was a good.
Yeah, that was more in the spirit of the original Cenobites.
But
it's a bit like Battle.
I do agree with what Danny was saying earlier, because I do think that Pinhead is very eloquent in Hellraiser 3. I love the lines that Peter Atkins wrote for him, and it's lines that most fans also quote by heart. Like When he's trying to get the box from Joey up in the boiler room, and all the monologue that he gives is just amazing. When he says things like, "I'm here to turn up the volume, to press the stinking face of humanity into the dark blood of its own secret heart," and it's like I'm paraphrasing it right now.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, its sounds are like razors through flesh.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that kind of Pinhead monologue continues on into the next movie too, which that's nice that you have that Pinhead has kind of taken on that sort of intellectual, I guess, dialogue.
Eloquence.
Yeah, I mean, in the same way, it has more in common with a character like Hannibal Lecter, who gets into your mind, he gets into your head, he sees all your weaknesses, and I think that,
absolutely.
I think that's that made him an interesting. I mean, his eyes. It's almost like, especially in the scenes in Hellraiser 3 with him and J.P. Monroe, he can see through. And in the same, he can see through JP's weaknesses, what he's done. It's a bit like in some way he's got the power of Leviathan, but he's been freed. He can see all what he's done, and it just the way the eyes, they're black, and it pierces through the very soul of what you've done in your life. Because J.P. Monroe, if I remember, J.P. Monroe, he killed his parents to inherit their wealth.
That's right. That's what they hint at. Yeah. Yeah,
and if I'm trying to think, the character of Terry, and he gets her. He sort of gains her, sees what she is, and he's able to turn her.
Or trick her. Yeah.
Trick her. Yeah, exactly. Manipulate her, and she sort of agrees to help him. And it's what's the word? I'm trying to think of it. It's the purity of someone. He's able to. I mean, that's where sort of the characters of Kirsty and Joey from Hellraiser 3, they have a kind of a purity to them in some way, and I think that's what Pinhead admires about them. He wants to sort of turn them, but he can't. And I think that's in the same way with Clarice and Hannibal. There's a relationship there that a love-hate kind of relationship, and an admiration.
Right. Yeah. Again, what drew me to Silence of the Lambs was the fact that Anthony Hopkins is such a sophisticated villain again, and I think that sophistication really adds this kind of charm to the monster of the film, and the same happens to Pinhead. The Cenobites in Hellraiser, to me, are the most fascinating characters. They're the explorers in the further regions of experience, and they're not just monsters. They're like theologians of the Order of the Gash.
The Order of the Gash, right. Yeah, I mean,
right.
That very kind of priesthood aspect was
that's one of the biggest crimes of the later sequels, especially Revelations, right? Is it seems like either the actor or the director didn't get that the way Pinhead was supposed to be. Because that Pinhead from Hellraiser Revelations was not anywhere near the Pinhead character that we were familiar with.
That's right. It took it further and further away, and
it only just looked a little bit like Pinhead, but didn't act like him or didn't have lines that were similar.
That's right. I mean, it just as I said, it just took it away from what its original concept was.
That's just one of the problems for Hellraiser Revelations, but
that's just one of them.
It's a big one. Yeah.
I mean, and as well, I like as well. I mean, there was obviously many ideas with all the Hellraiser sequels, and I think budget comes up a lot, and I think the ideas are there. It's just sometimes they're not given the money to go with the ideas, and I think with Hellbound Hellraiser 2, as it's shown in the Leviathan documentary, there were certain scenes that were cut because of sort of budgetary reasons, and they didn't come out kind of as well as they hoped. That doctor surgeon scene, which they could do easily now, and also I think in Hellbound, the Chatterer Cenobite, at the end he has eyes, and it's never shown how he got those eyes, and there was a scene where a deleted scene where he's in a Cenobite kind of a saloon type bar in hell, and he's obviously getting his skin peeled so he can have his eyes back. And I mean, that is, I would have loved to have seen that. I mean, maybe in the future films they'll be able to have maybe kind of money to do that.
Yeah,
and it's neat to see little things like that can kind of explain how hell works and what the Cenobites are like. Like the Chatterer was supposed to chase Kirsty and Tiffany down a hallway, right? And then he gets his fingers cut off in the elevator door.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so then would his fingers have grown back? That would be an interesting thing to find out in the lore of Hellraiser in general.
Yeah, it would be a bit like the T-1000. He'd reform his fingers back,
He could probably get some other fingers sewn back. That's in hell. You don't. Yeah. You're not lacking in any sort of body parts. That's right.
Yeah, and the engineer actually would have been in the movie too, and we could have learned a little more about him.
Yeah, and that that I would have liked to have seen, because you don't after Hellraiser 1 there's not really any mention of him apart. In Hellraiser Inferno there's a character named the Engineer, but in any of the Hellraiser sequels, you never see that creature again. As you said, there was a deleted scene, I believe, in Hellraiser 2, but it was never shown. But I would have loved to have seen, because he comes back in the comics, and I believe, and he in a lot of fan fiction as well.
And speaking of Hellraiser sequels, we had kind of passed this by. I forgot we really want to talk about Hellraiser the Toll, and this was news that just popped up yesterday, and it's a little shocking. I mean, I think it's amazing news, but there's a book coming out, and it's a story that Clive Barker came up with, written by Mark Miller, who is the president of his company, or the vice president of Seraphim Films. And this is a novel sequel to the Hellbound Heart, and sort of a prequel to the Scarlet Gospels.
Yeah, I remember seeing this now. Yeah, I remember seeing it. I think Clive had advertised it. There was like a story before the Scarlet Gospels. So I'd like to see that.
There's been another story that's been mentioned in a few places over the last couple of years or so, called Heaven's Reply, but that's not what this is going to be about. This is going to be the Toll tells the story of what happened between Clive's Hellbound Heart and the Scarlet Gospels, and 30 years after Kirsty escaped from the clutches of the Hell Priest, Pinhead, and lived to fight another day, her life has never been the same. Every few years, she fashions a new name, a new identity, and a new home for herself. She is a woman who's running from her past at all costs, which is why it comes as such a surprise when she receives a mysterious letter in the mail addressed to the woman she's been running from over half her life. Answering the letter's query, she begins a descent down a rabbit hole to the ultimate confrontation. Her actions will stir something unnameable in the ether and throw her into a game where nothing, not even what she sees in front of her very eyes, can be trusted. With equal parts economy and eloquence, author Mark Allen Miller brings to life the beginning of the end as the Toll expands the Hellraiser universe and shows that before Harry D'Amour's adventures in the Scarlet Gospels, there was a first witness to Pinhead's infernal plan. So that's the synopsis for the Toll. So it sounds very interesting to me.
I think I'll have to read. I'll have to buy that. I'll have to read that. That sounds incredible.
It's limited. I would order it now if you can. I think, what did they say? There's it's a strange number. It's like 477 copies or something like that.
724.
724 copies, yeah.
There's going to be 724 numbered cloth-bound copies signed by Mark Miller, and there's going to be a lettered edition. So that's 26 signed leather-bound copies housed in a custom tray case signed by Clive and Mark. So that's what it's going to be. I think the limited edition is $40.
I'll definitely have to order that.
And where sometimes something like this might last a few weeks because it's got Hellraiser right in the title, I'd advise anybody to buy it right now because the Hellraiser fan base is huge. And, I think that it's probably going to, that's my prediction. I may be totally off base, but I think this being, new Hellraiser fiction, and a Clive Barker story, that it's probably going to sell out pretty quickly. And people, I think it was also written in a way to sort of fill this this gap where people were there was some disappointment in the Scarlet Gospels that it was a shorter book than people were expecting. And so then this was a way for them to come back and maybe they used a little bit of elements from the notes. It sounds like mostly it's its own kind of new story, but right. But yeah, so this is to say, hey, there's more. We've got more to this story, and we're gonna get this done. So I'm excited about it. I think I did see a little bit. I was looking. I think early this morning when I woke up, I was looking at some of the comments on our news story about this, and one guy was like, "Anybody else feeling cheated? I would like for Clive Barker to have done this instead." And it's like, my feeling on that is like, well, Clive Barker was not going to write this book. So if you don't, this is something special and something extra. So Clive Barker's working on Aberrat 4, and he's working on a new young adult novel called Scare Baby that we don't know anything about. This is something that if Mark Miller hadn't taken this on, it probably wouldn't have been done at all. So I think that we should. Sure. I'm just waiting. I'm anxiously waiting for that to come, and I'm hoping that we get to read it a little early so we can talk about, so that we can kind of review it and talk about it for the podcast.
Oh yeah, it's coming out January of next year.
Yeah.
So that's something to look forward to. Something for Santa to drop in your little stocking there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Another thing I wouldn't mind, going back to the original Hellraiser. I would just like to mention that Lakeshore Records produced the 30th anniversary vinyl edition release of Christopher Young's beautiful score for the original Hellraiser. And this new edition is totally remixed and remastered from the original 24-track, 2-inch analog master session tapes. And it's going to be a lovely gatefold vinyl album. And you're going to have great artwork and photography from the film's archives. And it's going to be printed, the disc is going to be printed in 140-gram multicolored translucent red with black smoke vinyl. So,
oh, wow.
And it comes out on October 6th, I think. That's when Rob made an article announcing it. So another thing that's going to happen that's really cool is that this edition of Lakeshore soundtrack is going to be signed by Christopher Young in Dark Delicacies in Burbank, California. So
right. Yeah.
We announced that. Let me just check the date real quick. But
I wonder if that's already gone by at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me see. We can cut this part out, I guess.
Yeah.
That's nice. I wish I could make it there.
Yeah. Well.
Oh no, October 6th. Or no, it comes out on October 6th.
Okay. So I guess we'll just cut this part out, and we can just link the thing to the show notes.
Yeah. So, and I'm not sure when the Dark Delicacies signing is anymore. I don't think that's in our. That was in
that article
story.
I did. It was in that article I did not too long ago. But it's okay. We'll add that to the show notes. So, but going back to Hellraiser 1, I think one of the things that some people may know out there, but a lot of people probably don't, is that the soundtrack originally was not meant to be Christopher Young. It was meant to be done by a band called Coil, which a lot of you guys out there might know. So there is this version of the unused themes for Hellraiser by Coil. What are your opinion on that? What is your opinion on that? I mean, do you think it would have been a better movie? Do you think it would have gotten dated pretty quickly? What do you think?
Well, I think it's good that we can hear it now and sort of make our own judgment. But I think what the Christopher Young score was just completely transcendent image and the mood.
Yeah.
And I think the coil music would have been wrong to use for the film. I'm not saying that it's bad, but I'm just saying I don't think it would have set the right tone for the film. I mean, how do you feel about it?
I think it would have been made the movie a bit different, a lot different than what we got. And I know that somewhere in an alternate universe out there, there's got to be a Hellraiser that's totally scored by Coil. It would have definitely have anchored it a lot to the 80s in terms of, sound-wise, I think. An orchestral soundtrack is more timeless, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like I remember Tony Randall saying in the audio commentary of Hellbound's Hellraiser 2 that the Christopher Young score. So I mean, you can hear its influence in so many other films. Batman came out. Tim Burton's Batman came out in 1989, and it was scored by Danny Elfman. And Danny Elfman was clearly inspired by that kind of thickness.
Well, and you can and they even stole some of that for Spider-Man 2, right? I mean,
yes.
you can actually Dr. Octopus's theme is actually from right out of Hellbound.
That's right. That's right. I mean I'm trying to think. And it's funny because if I'm thinking right, Christopher Young scored Spider-Man 3 as well. I think.
But I think going back to that, it would have anchored it in the 80s. I mean, if you think about, that's not saying that I think that this would have been better, but if you think about like Blade Runner and the Vangelis score, that doesn't necessarily make that movie like lost in time.
No. In fact, you know what? It's funny because when you said Blade Runner, and it makes me think of all those cuts that are out there. And do you know what I'd love? I'm sure you guys would. I know you're going to agree with me that with the original Hellraiser, I'd love to hear a version with the original voices, and maybe even have an alternate version with the coil music, and that way you can choose which version. I mean, I'd love to have that one day. I mean, I definitely would love to hear the original. I'd love to hear Oliver Smith's, because there's a trailer out there. It's from the German trailer, I think it is, and they have Oliver Smith's. He played Frank the Monster, and he, and then Mr. Browning in Hellraiser 2. But I would love to hear the original accents.
That's right, and Sean Bateman too.
Yeah, I think the only weird thing about that is they'd have a little bit of explaining to do. Why do Larry and Frank, like Larry has an American accent and Frank has a British accent?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Kirsty's and Larry are American and Frank is British.
Exactly. I mean, but you know what? Just to hear it anyway would be, it'd just be a picture. I just love to hear it. And if you can choose, just choose it as a version to play. It would just be fun. I mean, exactly. I can see what you're saying about it. It wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. But I think
interesting though. I mean, I'm fascinated by that idea. I'm a big fan of fan edits, which are movies that have been edited by other people other than the director. And I think there's something to that. I mean, not that Hellraiser has this functionality, but for example, some movies. It's easier to do that Danny is talking about, like rescoring the movie, because sometimes some movies have watch the movie without the music, for example, or just the dialogue or something. And especially in some Blu-rays or DVDs, there are some movies that have that functionality. And that allows people to rescore a movie if they want. And it's funny because there's something called temp score for movies, and some people may not know this, but during the editing process of the film, oftentimes the composer is still working on the soundtrack. So what they do is, to make a producer's cut to get the feel of what the movie is like, often they put in temp music to score certain scenes. I've seen temp score in a Hellraiser movie once when I got a work print of Hellraiser 3, and it was scored with some rock and roll music in there, and then it also had some music from Hellbound.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny to see that because it brings you closer to that the process of a movie editing and the layering of all the effects onto a movie. Most people think, I mean, some people think that when you're seeing a movie with two actors talking to each other, that was like the sound that was happening on the set, and oftentimes it's really not. Like they're only capturing the voices of the actors. Most of the background noise, sometimes it's totally made up for the movie. Special effects, Foley, ADR, all that stuff. Like there's a horse, galloping in a scene. Oftentimes that galloping is not the real one that was happening when the horse was being filmed. There was something else that someone put in there just to match it to that, or lines that characters say that get changed in post production. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there may be an issue there with isn't the Coil soundtrack? There's really not enough music, right, for the whole movie.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's it. I mean, the EP that it came out is not. You'd have to loop some parts of it, I guess, if you wanted to do that.
Kind of like what they did for the later versions of Nightbreed.
Right. Yes. That's.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking as well. I mean, I know that there's been sort of talks of rebooting the original Hellraiser, but I was also thinking of, we just had there's the release of Terminator 2 3D, and James Cameron was able to, there were some mistakes in the film that he was able to get rid of. But I was thinking with the original Hellraiser, if one day they could give money to Clive Barker or whoever to clean it up. The bit with the engineer going down the tunnel, and you can see the image animation, the wheels, And if they could digitally get rid of that, I'd love to see that as well happen, because it would just make what he had intended it to be, and just a few little touches up, because I think as to me, as it's as imperfect as it is, it's still like perfect to me, So
I think that once you start tinkering, it's hard to figure out where to draw the line or where to stop, because it's like they do that and then they'll be like, well, maybe we could do this yellow lightning stuff a little better.
You're right. No, you're right.
And then the problem with there is, Clive Barker hand drew all that stuff right onto the film, in the editing, and it's like that adds a certain sort of charm that, I wouldn't. I don't know.
I agree. I mean, it's to some aspect I agree, because I think you'd be entering George Lucas territory there.
Right.
He overdid some of the remastering versions. The part of the charm was having that. It was having that kind of the I don't want to say it, but that kind of the tackiness, the kind of grittiness was what made it. Made that. Made it happen. Made it work.
Sure,
instead of making it shiny and pretty and
Well,
I mean, it at its heart, it's a $1 million movie.
I think what Danny is saying is not unreasonable. I mean, for example, you were talking about Terminator 2 coming out again with some digital enhancements, and I understand why he did it. I mean, there's parts when Arnold Schwarzenegger is jumping with his bike from that into that storm drain or something, and you can see that it's the stuntman, not Arnold, and then they kind of digitally put his face on top of that scene. Another scene was, I think, the windshield of the truck breaks and pops out when it goes into the storm drain, and then the next scene you have the windshield back on. Those little continuity things that he fixed are not unreasonable enhancements to do to a movie. Like, for example, when they did Blade Runner Final Cut, and I just want to talk about another one before I get back to Hellraiser, but the Blade Runner Final Cut, for example, the scene where Joanna Cassidy is running away from Harrison Ford, and she gets shot. And that thing was one of the last things to be shot, and they had like a bad wig that they gave to the stunt lady, and then she goes through the plated glass, and it's obvious that it's not Joanna Cassidy. They did that. They fixed that for the Final Cut, and it looks great. Yeah. And even
it does. It looks nice.
Even Francis Ford Coppola went back and spent like $500,000 recently to enhance his movie Cotton Club. So it's not, if you don't go like George Lucas level, it's like I'm not opposed to that as long as you have the money to go into it and it's done with
and it's not going to take away from the the original look and feel of the film.
As long as you can still buy the original version. I mean, sometimes these things just get replaced. And that article about, when I read an article about this James Cameron thing, he's like, "Oh, there's this continuity error that's been bugging me, and I finally get to fix it." I was thinking in my mind he was going to talk about the fact that only living flesh can go through the time displacement.
Uh-huh.
And here this Terminator made out of liquid metal was able to go through. It didn't have any human skin or any flesh on it. I mean, that to me, that's the biggest continuity problem for Terminator 2. Not like that you can see a stuntman. I mean, we see that all the time in movies, and we forgive it.
You know what? The thing you just brought up, I never thought of that. It's amazing the things that movie directors get away with sometimes just because we just take it for granted. It's like, hey, it's part of the story. If the T-1000 or whatever didn't get through, there wouldn't be a movie. So we kind of forgive that, It's like, well, it has to be covered in flesh
exactly.
or something. But,
exactly.
They could have made it like a ball, just a ball with human skin grown all around it, and that would have fixed it. And then he just cuts his way out of it.
Actually, this is to get to Hellraiser Bloodline, actually, which is kind of a sci-fi type of movie.
Uh-huh.
I'd love to with Hellraiser Bloodline. I'd love to one day see a definitive version released as well of that, because I think that's it is easily the most ambitious of the Hellraiser films. I mean, the original scripts, the idea is very ambitious. It doesn't fall into the realm of a Jason X or a Leprechaun in space. It's actually it deserves a lot more credit than what it gets. I think
it seems good scripts that ended up turning into arguably bad movies are the ones that need remakes the most, and they're the ones that never get it.
Especially for an Alan Smithy film, it's just hard to find someone who's willing to go back and work on the movie because, for example, Kevin Yeager is not going to go back to that. He doesn't want to revisit it, and Joe Chappelle is not going to revisit that movie either. So in that sense, I think sometimes movies get disowned, and they just never get owned again. It's just... Unfortunately, they're orphan movies. I would love to see a good version of it too. But
I mean,
I would love to see them just remake it like that, or Rawhead Rex. Would be awesome to remake.
That would be a good idea. I mean, that would be a very good idea. I mean, I think as well, because I was thinking, we had the Cabal cut release, so you never know. But I suppose, but that's what Clive Barker had intended. That was his vision, that he always had intended to be. That's the book. That was the original script. I mean, we've also have that coming out soon as well, which I can't wait. Is it the Blu-ray release on the Clive Barker store?
Yes. Yes. The Blu-ray release. Yes.
I mean, I'll be pre-ordering that as well. I think
that's going to be really soon as we're recording this too. There are a few copies of the $75 edition that are being sold at the Son of Monsterpalooza convention this weekend.
Going back to Hellraiser 1, I just wanted to ask you, what are some of your favorite collectibles that you have about Hellraiser?
Well, and I think before we get to that, we should probably also put in here. Here's a recording from Rob Ridenauer that his first experience with Hellraiser.
I remember my brother one year for Christmas had gotten a double box set VHS collection of the first two Hellraisers. These were the edited versions, though, especially of the second film. The first time I saw that was the R-rated cut. I'd always been curious about the films, and I never was allowed to watch them as a child. I think a lot of people the title alone kind of was like a taboo thing, Hellraiser. Because I've been born and raised in the South, Western part of the state of North Carolina. You know, a lot of that kind of stuff was kind of frowned upon, and but I always was struck by the image of this guy with this character with his pins in his head. So when my brother got those, I was actually the first to watch them. I took them and watched them that night. I watched the first one. I was surprised because I didn't. The boxes showed off the Cenobites like they were like the main character. So when I first saw the film, I was a little like, because the opening is so good and so kind of just shocking. It's in your face, and you see these beings that, what are these things? They're playing around with somebody's body parts, and you don't really know what to expect after that. But then it goes into this drama about this love story. Really, when I first watched it, I wasn't very interested in that. It was only later that I really started to appreciate the film. I really enjoyed the second one more because it anteed up the story and took a lot more, I thought, chances with the material, expanded on the mythology. And the part two is my favorite of the franchise. But Hellraiser was a film that grew on me through repeated viewings. I think really, I like how the Cenobites aren't the main focus of the story. They're kind of like side players who really, are just, characters that are, not that important to the overall focus and center of the story. Because the movie's really kind of a claustrophobic film in a house. It's really just kind of a haunted house film. So over a couple years after I first saw it, is only when I started to appreciate the first film a lot more. And it continues to get better every time I watch it. So, I just want to wish Hellraiser a happy, birthday, and I hope it. I know it will continue to, find a new audience with each passing, generation, and hopefully it'll continue to, people will go back to that. And, none of these the other sequels. Well, I like the first four, but anything past four, I just consider to be dog shit. So that's just my opinion. I know fans of those films. They have a lot of fans of the direct-to-video films, but I'm just not a big fan of them. Except maybe Part 6, Hellseeker. I like that one pretty good. Anyway, happy birthday, Hellraiser.
All right, so going back to Hellraiser, I just want to ask you guys, what are some of your favorite collectibles that you own from Hellraiser?
Well, I have the trading cards. I have the complete collection. From it has all the cards all the complete collection, which is from the first three films, and I also have some comic books as well. Marvel comic books.
Yeah, those are good. Yeah.
I have some. Obviously, I've now collected all the Fangoria and all the sort of magazines that were around the time of the film. I'd just gone onto eBay and just I was so obsessed with the franchise, and also I have the puzzle box, the Element Configuration, as well. And I've got the masks and costumes as well, Pinhead and Chatterer, Butterball.
Right, I've seen you take pictures with some of the actors while you're in costume.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think what else I've got. I have some of the toys as well. The Mecha had released a whole line of the sort of Cenobites.
That's right. Yeah, and I guess the UK got some imported in. Yeah, those were hard to find when you were not living in the US.
Yeah, I mean I know that they're very rare now. I mean, you can get. They're they're collector's items. I mean, they're so expensive. I mean, the hard one to get hold of is Skinless Frank.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he costs about, I think it's about £70 in the UK.
Wow.
To get hold.
And the Chenard box set is also very hard to get. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's one I haven't got actually, and I need to get. But there's a really good one. Which I do have it, and I haven't taken a picture or uploaded it, but I have the a Chenard mask from Ripper Masks. It's definitely worth checking. The design. Yeah. Gary Smart has a mask as well. I think from that. It's by Ripper Masks, but it's they deliver it in 30 days because I think they actually make them, and it's an incredible design. It looks a lot like, obviously it's like the Shannara Cenobite in Hellbound Hellraiser 2, but it looks incredible. And I have that, and yeah, I mean I have the soundtracks from first as well.
And the Leviathan documentary is great too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Leviathan documentary as well. I have the kind of edition where it has the mattress on.
Yes.
And so had a special limited run on the mattress.
Julia,
yeah, from the Kickstarter.
This is one that you'll love. Obviously, I'm part of the Leviathan documentary, but they got. I need to hang it up on my wall. It's not a poster, but it is a poster, but it's actually signed by everyone from the
that's
two
awesome,
films.
man. That's awesome.
And wow. That's probably one to have in your collection. I mean, that's signed by everyone. I mean, Gary, I think he'd obviously it was part of the deal when you were with when you were a co-executive producer that you get this, and he'd literally, I've now got it framed finally. I need to put that on my wall, and I'll send it to you guys, because it's just fantastic. It's fantastic, and I've got some posters as well. I've got a poster of the original film, and I think that's about it, really. I mean, I can't really think of anything else.
It's a great collection. Yes, it's a great collection. A lot of cool stuff there, for sure.
T-shirt.
A T-shirt. Yeah, sure. I have. I just love my Scarlet box. That's one of the things I love the most. Even though I before that I used to love the Anchor Bay set that came out in the early 2000s. I think it was done in the shape of a square, the Hellraiser box, and then you would open it up. It would have a big block of styrofoam in there, but then you would have Hellraiser 1, 2, and 3, and then an extra disc, and that was also pretty amazing. I mean, that was.
I did have that, but I sold it stupidly. But it is a wonderful box set.
That one never came out in the U.S. I don't think. I think it's only it's only a European.
2, I think. Yeah, it was Region 2.
Yeah.
And I guess I love the Hellraiser Anthology 1 and 2, of course. I have the first one signed by Clive Barker and all the other writers and artists that did stories for it. And I guess I do have, this is kind of funny, but I do have a pin from Hellraiser, from the Hellraiser 3 makeup. It was given to me by a Brazilian Hellraiser fan and collector. His name is Antonio Érico Conceição Barcelos from Brazil. So thanks Tony, for the pen. He also has a few pieces. He's a big Hellraiser collector. He's got some Julia makeup pieces as well in his collection. And one day he sent me. He's like, "Hey, I want to send you a pen from the Pinhead makeup," and I got it, and it's great. It's like it's in this special tin in my shelf, and it's a little piece of Pinhead there. So that's another thing awesome. I like. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that is cool.
And what else do I have? I have some posters. I do have the vinyl soundtrack for Hellraiser 2, which has that iconic figure of the Cenobites on the front cover, and it's just beautiful.
I know. Yeah, that is like, that's truly iconic. That's a nice one to have. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
and I guess all these, like, all the things that came out in the years. I mean, the Hellbound Heart book with the UK paperback cover that's got Pinhead, and then it's got Frank and Julia kissing, and it's beautiful. It's got all these like golden details on the cover, so that's pretty cool. So what about you, Ryan?
So I've collected a lot of Hellraiser stuff over the years, and I've been to so many Clive Barker book signings, and then because of Occupy Midian, I actually got to meet a lot of the Cenobite actors. And so I brought along all of my stuff, everything I could possibly get autographed. So starting with the the Laserdisc, the original pan and scan cheapo Laserdisc of Hellraiser. I've got autographs all over that one. I got the box set of the Laserdisc that has the script inside of it and stuff, and that's all autographed by a lot of people. And then the DVD tin. I think it was Anchor Bay did that one, right? The tin that had Hellraiser 1 and 2 in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the Hellraiser Blu-ray, and then the Scarlet Box. That's not signed by Scarlet Box isn't signed by anybody because I just got that one. And then the Scarlet Gospels is autographed, and the Hellbound Heart is. I've got the 20th anniversary edition of the Hellbound Heart signed by Clive Barker, and I have a replica. I mean, I have a printing of the script. It's not like a screen used one,
right?
Or not like a one used, but I have a copy of an early draft of the Hellraiser script that's signed by Clive Barker and by all of these people who were in Hellraiser.
Oh, nice. Oh, that is one to have. That is one to have. I know if I had that, I would frame that. That would be that's nice.
Oh, I like to be able to read it too. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so you can have it out, but to have it framed, that would be nice because it's just.
I think the one that I have says Rory instead of Larry in it and stuff too.
Back to the original from the original.
Yeah. So it's a little closer to the novel. But yeah, I mean, and I have a Lament configuration from Pyramid Gallery, the musical one, which is really.
I haven't got that. I haven't got that one. I've got one from configuration boxes, but I will be getting one from the.
Oh yeah, I forgot to say that. I also do have like 3 boxes from the Pyramid Gallery, and they're musical boxes. So if you put this little wooden support underneath it and you wind it up and put it face down, it'll just spin around as it plays the music, and they're beautiful. I mean, the Pyramid Gallery boxes are just amazing. And I do have an older one. It's not from Pyramid Gallery. It was made by this guy from an old forum, the Hellbound Web. His name, I think, was Morpheus69, and he used to make these like Hellraiser boxes, and one of them was a Cthulhu design box that has these like tentacles on the panels and stuff. And I don't have it here with me. It's back in Portugal in storage. But that was another one of the boxes I had. And I got this one star box that you could like pull it out and twist it and stick it back in, and it would make the star configuration of the Hellraiser box. And I think that one was made by a guy called Kevin from Florida. I forgot what his website was. So yeah, I've always been into that kind of thing, and so I don't have the trading cards yet. That's a thing I honestly never had a chance to buy. So kudos to you, Danny, for having that collection.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I only just bought them like 2 weeks ago, but I found them on some kind of UK collector's website, and they were like £30. So I was like, I'm getting that, and they were brand new. They were, they were all kind of wrapped up. They had the album, and I was like,
That's
I'm
awesome.
buying that straight away. Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. I mean, again, I'll send you guys some pictures because it's definitely a collector's item. Definitely one to have. Definitely.
I have the Clive Barker trading card set, and I have two sets of the Box of Blood, where it's the Books of Blood trading cards. But I always wanted to get those Hellraiser ones, and I just never got around.
I tell you what, I do have. I got it when it came out. I got the hardback edition of the Scarlet Gospels. And,
yes, yeah.
And there was I haven't read it, but I have a copy of it. The Paul Kane book where it was the Sherlock Holmes. He hit Pinhead. I'm trying to think what it's called.
Of Hell.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Servants of Hell.
I'm still reading that book. I'm so slow.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I mean, I did start it, but I haven't had the chance to finish it yet. But
it's quite a ride. It's very cool. You're going to find a lot of references to Hellraiser and Hellbound throughout the book. It's so rewarding when you see what Watson gets himself into. It's brilliant. Yeah. I love that book by Paul Kane. One of my favorite books.
Every time we start reading something else, I have to put it down and then pick it up later again.
Well,
For the
That's what
podcast,
happens when you got kids.
Yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I haven't got that, so
Yeah.
I mean, I've got all the time.
Just bringing it back to Hellraiser again, I just want to say that Phil and Sarah, who have done the brilliant book companion for the Scarlet Box called Damnation Games, they're still working on their official The Making of Hellraiser book. And they did a recent update on clivebarker.info, and I just want to read a little bit of it. It says that as we close in on the completion of our official The Making of Hellraiser book, here's an update of what we've been up to, as well as a few images to celebrate the opening weekend back in '87. And they posted this really recently, and they posted a little article called The Definitive Story of Clive Barker's Hellraiser by Phil and Sarah Stokes. So I recommend you go over to Clive Barker Info and read this, because it's a great essay that they got going here. So I'm looking forward to this Making of Hellraiser book. It's hopefully it'll come out soon.
They're the best Clive Barker chroniclers, for sure.
Oh, they are. They are complete archivists. They know everything.
Yeah.
Those people,
Yeah.
they know everything.
They list here some of the things that the definitive volume will cover, and some of them are an early film and theatrical projects from Clive and the Dog Company, which prefigured the themes of Hellraiser, and I think they're talking about movies like The Forbidden and other things that they mention in the Damnation Games book. It'll feature also some critical reaction to the Books of Blood and the Damnation Game, Clive's first published fiction. It will cover the writing of the screenplays for Rawhead Rex and Underworld, what Clive went through with those things, and how those things got translated into the screen. They're going to cover the process of writing The Hellbound Heart as a basis for a possible debut theatrical directing project. And few people know this. I got this from one of Clive's social media managers, but I saw some pictures once of the original manuscript of The Hellbound Heart, and it was fascinating because it has these drawings on the pages, and
I saw that too.
An early drawing of a Cenobite, and they were supposed to be called scalpels, I think. They weren't supposed to be called Cenobites at first. They were supposed to be called scalpels, and I just think that's amazing. I hope they're going to include scenes of that and pictures of it. More stuff here. They're going to cover the collaborations with Chris Figg, Bob Keane, and others in the pre-production stage of Hellraiser, the first draft screenplay, pre-production and production artwork. As we all have seen over the years, there's plenty of sketches that Clive did of Pinhead, sketches he did of Frank coming out of the wall, and all that stuff that he did for a package to pitch Hellraiser. They'll have on-set and behind-the-scenes photographs, interviews with the cast and crew, and critical reaction on release, and they'll talk about what's more fascinating to me, the mythology and metaphysics of Hellraiser, and I can't wait to read this. So I hope Sarah, if you're listening to this, you got a very excited customer here waiting to throw his money at you.
Hey, me too. Yeah. Me too. I'm there as well. I mean, I've emailed those guys saying I can't wait for it. So, and they said thanks for the support. You know, I think they're just like you guys. They're all and myself and everyone involved keeping the franchise and Clive Barker's, you know, everything Clive Barker and everything to do with Hellraiser. We're just keeping it alive. We're keeping film alive, and we're keeping art alive. So I think we're keeping the legends going. And
Vincent Capriotti says that Songs of Metal and Flesh is my favorite comic by far. It pains me that most people I know don't remember Hellraiser, and when they do lump it in the category of other mundane slashers, they call it a monster movie. The fault is mainly on Dimension Films. For many reasons made clear to us, it's apparent that Dimension Films does not respect the franchise for what it was and what it can be. I would love to see an anthology series based on the comics. The themes expressed and showcased throughout the series have delved into the human psyche in ways that most horror titles never do. In the Hellraiser franchise, the people are simultaneously the good guys and the bad guys, and it's not the Cenobites that I fear, it's the range of human emotions and the depths they can fall or rise to. I always thought of the Cenobites as a catalyst for human expression, and always thought it would be it would lend perfectly to an anthology structure. The comics have taken place in the 1700s, space, modern times, hell, etc., etc. The range was dynamic, is what I'm trying to say. Not sure how to end this rant, so I'll just say I can never be thankful enough to Clive Barker for making horror so disturbing yet elegant. No horror franchise has ever made me stop and think or fill me with such existential dread, and I love it. And that was Vincent Capriotti.
Great.
Very good. That's great.
Songs of Metal and Flesh. There was it came out in some of the first comics from Marvel, right? I think. Yeah. It was the one where there's a guy who learns how to play the piano, and then he goes on to become an amazing pianist, and then he comes up with a way to compose hellish music by rolling himself around the floor on broken nails and stuff, and then just spinning himself in a room covered in music pages, right? Like, so every time a drop of blood falls onto a stave, he would write it as a note, and then he would make a big performance out of it. And
oh wow,
yeah, that's a brilliant story. I remember Jonathan Q, our friend Jonathan Q, who was kind enough to send us a lot of audio material for an Occupy Midian on Location recent episode. He was at one point considering. He made 2 Hellraiser fan films: Hellraiser Prophecy and Winter's Lament. So at one point, we were kind of talking about the possibility of doing a 3rd fan film, which would be called Songs of Metal and Flesh. And it would be like adapting the script of that story onto a short. Unfortunately, real life got in the way, and, we didn't have any budget for it, so we never made it. But
oh, wow.
But yes, that's a great story. I love it. And I've seen artwork for sale on eBay for that particular comic book story, and it's just... I wish I could own a page of that, I own pages from a lot of those stories, but I wish I could have owned a page of that. Unfortunately, it was just too expensive. But I love what Vincent says here when he says that the Cenobites are a catalyst for human expression, and also that the thing that he describes Hellraiser as disturbing yet elegant. That's just spot on. Thanks, Vincent.
Yeah. It is. I mean, to me as well, it means so many different things. I mean, I was saying the other day actually to someone, to me, the Hellraiser franchise, or the particularly the first 2, are definitely they're an allegory of the whole AIDS catastrophe that was going on in the 80s with especially horror films like The Fly and The Thing tackled as also. I mean, the body horror aspects, and how far you go, and if you go that far, you're not coming back. So it's
how society reacts to those things. Like in England, you guys had the controversy of the horror nasties, which was almost like a blacklist of movies that.
That's right. Yeah, the video nasties
couldn't be sold, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, video nasties. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what else do we have from?
Bart Derek X shared his figure collection and a picture that he took with Doug Bradley. And Jim Mann, he showed us a picture. It says used in the opening scenes by Frank and in the psych ward by Kirsty in Hellraiser, by Tiffany in Hellraiser 2, Joey near the end of Hellraiser 3, and Lem Marchand in Hellraiser 4, the one and only animatronic screen matched real puzzle box.
Oh, okay. So he linked us to a movie prop collector's website, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm guessing he says he owns that. I wasn't quite 100% sure on that, but that's cool.
That is cool. I mean, there are a few boxes that were made for this movie, and not many people can own a copy of it. And beware, because sometimes these things appear in eBay, but they're not real. I mean, I've asked several big collectors about certain things, and even Jeff Portis, and sometimes they go back like, no, that doesn't look right. That's not a real screen use box.
Wow.
But I'll take his word for that. For him, I'll take his word on this one. I mean, it seems like he knows what he's talking about here.
Yeah.
So great collectible there.
And Rich B. Young said, "Dad took me to see this when it first came. The only movie to ever scare me."
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that was a gateway to horror for many of us, right?
Yeah.
It was for me.
And then here is also David Sharp's memories of Hellraiser.
Hey guys, David here. Sorry that I could not be on this episode. Really wanted to make it, celebrating the 30th birthday of Hellraiser, film that is near and dear to the hearts of many, including myself. Just a quick little story about how Hellraiser has influenced me over the years, which, if you've listened to the podcast that I currently co-host with my friend Travis, which is called Cinema Bluster, you may have heard this story before, so bear with me. But one of the earliest childhood memories I have is being around the age of 7 years old, and my father went to our local video store and brought home a VHS of a film called Hellraiser, and proceeded to tell me that it was a comedy and it was something that I would enjoy. Well, lo and behold, just not even 2-3 minutes into the film, I ran away from the movie screaming and crying, and my mom had to console me and comfort myself, my sister and I, and read us Highlights magazine for the rest of the night as I tried to scrub the images of Frank Cotton's flesh being ripped off of his body. And that film, it scarred me for quite some time, for quite a few years. It impacted me so much so that probably about a year later, I remember kicking and screaming and crying and falling on the floor when my family was trying to rent Tremors from the video store, because all I could think of was Hellraiser and the nightmares that gave me for the previous year. So, needless to say, my love for horror has stemmed from that film, and part of that was having to go back and face my fears and embrace what was in there. And when I finally got over the true shocking nature of it, it became one of the greatest things that I've ever seen. Still really, truly scared me beyond belief. I mean, even Hellraiser 3, it would come on at HBO at night, and I would watch some of the opening scenes, and when it'd get to the cart, the gurney coming down the hallway, going into the ER, and all the instruments being put out during the credits scene, it would still scare the hell out of me, and I'd have to run away and turn off the television and go and hide. But part of the love of Hellraiser and the love of Clive Barker stems from that getting over your fears. My father had told me once that the scariest thing that he'd ever done was read the books of blood when he was stationed out in the middle of nowhere when he was in the Navy. And so that was where my love for reading Clive Barker stories and appreciating the true world-building terror that comes with it. So I won't stay on here too long, but just want to say thanks to you guys for letting me come in and share my story of my earlier memories of Hellraiser and why it has consumed me and pretty much all of my nerddom and collecting, ranging from every VHS and DVD copy and Blu-ray copy of the film that I can find to all the oddities and knickknacks that I can store on my shelves. So happy birthday to Hellraiser, and thanks again, guys.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? I was going to say one thing, actually. I'll tell you what I would love to see for the future of Hellraiser is, if possible, is if there is a Scarlet Gospels film, I'd love to either see it to be adapted into a anime film, or a series, or even a series, like on the lines of like a Game of Thrones, something kind of epic, adding and subtracting things or whatever they need to do. I'd love to see that, like a Hellraiser TV series, definitely the whole. And maybe
that would be great. Imagine if they took this new book, the Hellraiser the Toll, and they started there and then worked their way all the way through the Scarlet Gospels. Yeah,
and imagine as well that they had the whole series set in hell, and you learn about the politics of hell and the whole Cenobite life, and just have a lot more exploration, I guess. And I'd love to see
mythology.
That. Yeah, it would be awesome. I mean, there's so many ideas that it could just go on and on and on. But I think there is still a decent film to be made. The Hellraiser franchise. I'd love to see, I'd love to see a great one be made again. I think there still is. I think there's still filmmakers, or there's still writers. There's still visionaries out there, and I just think it will happen one day for sure. I mean, it's got to happen. I mean, the thing is, I tell you what I did see recently. I saw the new It, and it captured the book a lot more than the original did. Mm-hmm. I mean, I still like the original. It had its charms, but it
it was made for TV, so it was
and it was toned down.
Yeah,
it was pampered exactly. And I think they could definitely go. And now that it's been very successful, huge, massive success, and it's quite dark, and it delves into certain aspects of the human condition and growing up and just all these things that we fear. I think that maybe that it might make horror films come back again. I'd love to see them adapt the Scarlet Gospels into a film as well, if that was possible, or even if they were to do the Hellbound Heart and do exactly what the book was again, and mm-hmm. maybe have a female Pinhead, maybe have Tilda Swinton play the role of Pinhead. I mean, there's so many things.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea at all. I really like Tilda Swinton. She always does these great roles of like these weird, strange, not all human creatures, and she always does this kind of alien like quality to the characters. I love that. Yeah.
I mean, they could go that. They could do that. They could do like Bride of Pinhead, or I mean, there's just so many aspects that they could do, and I think the ideas are there, and I think all it needs is a decent budget, good script, and I'd love to see Doug Bradley come back again.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And
sure.
I'd love to see it. I mean, how do you guys feel about?
What would you like to see for the future of Hellraiser, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would like to see them stop, just procrastinating and wasting time, and they act like they're planning to do something big, and then they don't get around to it, and then it's like, oh no, it's the deadline, we got to make a movie. And then they I mean, we don't know what Hellraiser Judgment is going to be like, but we do know that it was made because
the rights.
they wanted to hang on to the rights. I want to see them stop doing that and sell the rights to somebody who cares about Hellraiser.
Or give the rights back to Clive Barker. Give the rights back to people.
Yeah, that would be number one, but
wasn't that an April Fool's article that you wrote once, Ryan? That the articles of Hellraiser, the rights of Hellraiser had reverted back to Clive Barker?
Yes. Or either that, or I can't remember if I did that or if we just talked about doing that.
I think you wrote an article about that. That was funny, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, can I say what I would expect for the future of Hellraiser? Okay.
Yeah.
So, geez, all right. Well, bear with me because it's going to be a bit of a rant. So the tagline for Hellraiser, at least the one of the first taglines was Hellraiser, there are no limits, right? The thing is, there has to be limits when you make a movie. It's unfortunately it's either like budget constraints or ratings, or you have to make it following a certain ratings code, or there's going to be either the MPAA or the BFCC or whatever. They're going to inflict cuts on your movies and stuff. So it used to be worse for that. But I also think that back in the 80s and 90s, that filmmakers were allowed to take more risks and go beyond certain boundaries that nowadays people seem to be more reluctant to cross. And it's like I was watching John Waters' Pink Flamingos the other day, and it's like some of the stuff in that movie would not make it into a movie nowadays at all. It's like there's just stuff that goes beyond this boundary, and it's like it's great when that happens. And I wish I could see that happening more with Hellraiser. I wish I could see more things that would be I'm not just talking about violence or gore, but I'm talking about showing us things that would really, truly scare us. And one of the movies that scared me the most in my life and I almost walked out of it like 2 or 3 times, was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And for me, I was sitting in the theater, and I was like in my 20s when I was watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I was like, wow, I am so uncomfortable right now. I need to get out, and I need to take a break from this movie. And I would just stand up, and someone would say, sit down. And I would just sit down again in the middle of the theater. And I'd be like, okay, I'll give it another 5 minutes. And then I got up again. I was like, no, this is too much. And then, I just, okay, well, it's almost like over. Let's just sit down again. That was, to this day, I never felt so uncomfortable watching a movie like I was watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Hellraiser, I didn't really get scared by it. I was just fascinated with it. I was fascinated with the characters. I was fascinated with the story. At the time, I'm not sure if I knew what a Faustian story was, or I don't know if I had read Goethe's Faust at that time yet, but I definitely got into that later when high school, and then I understood what this archetypal story was, what we call like a Faustian tale. So it's basically when someone has to sell their soul to the devil in exchange for power or enlightenment or wisdom or something, and then there's a price to pay, and usually people say there's going to be hell to pay. Well, that's what happens with Hellraiser. And but I was never really that scared. So I would like to be more scared with Hellraiser. I would like to see a Hellraiser that shows you more of this sort of transformation that the Cenobites can inflict on people and why they do it. Not too much on who they are and what the Cenobite life is in hell, because I think the more you show the monster, it just kind of...
It gives it away. It gives it away.
It gives it away a little bit, right? It humanizes it.
Takes away the mystery. Yeah, it takes away the...
I don't want to see the Cenobites, walking into their little temple and sitting down and having lunch or whatever. I don't want to see that. I want to see what they do and how they do it and why they do it, but in a way that will just... I don't know. That'll scare me. I truly think that we have never seen the quintessential surgeons from beyond doing their thing. I mean, we've seen Frank sitting in a room in his hell, in his personal hell, and we've seen we've seen what happens to the Cenobites in Hellraiser 3, what Pinhead does to them physically, to people who are human. But we don't see it happening, and I think I would like to see that happen. Even when Channard is being transformed in Hellraiser 2, he's just transformed inside this kind of machine that just pops out of the ground.
Yeah, you don't really see it, do you? Really, he's just taken down to the seventh level of hell, basically. And you don't really see. It's like you don't really see what has happened, And
and what happened to Pinhead was sort of a blurry montage.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. In the beginning of Hellraiser 2, when Elliot Spencer opens the box. So what I would like to see for Hellraiser, I mean, there's things that start, that are becoming a little harder to expect for a future Hellraiser. Like I'm not sure if Doug Bradley is going to come back to be Pinhead. I mean, I don't know if that's happening. Actors. They're just human like us. They age, and I'm not saying he's old or too old to play Pinhead. I think an old Pinhead would actually be pretty cool to see. I mean, we've seen...
I'd love to see it. It'd be like Unforgiven in a way, like Clint Eastwood. It'd be like someone who's lived for centuries, and,
right? Yeah.
And he could he's seen it all, and that would be an interesting.
A bit like the Pinhead played by Gary Tunnicliffe in No More Souls. I don't know if you've seen that short, Danny.
No, that's one I'll have to check out. I mean, I have heard of it, but I will have to check it out.
It's a very cool short. It takes place like eons from now, when there is no more souls to harvest, and there's been a big war, and everybody's dead, and Pinhead is just sitting in his throne and is just bored, senseless, and he's pulling out his own pins and putting them on an altar thing, and he's like, okay, well, it's time for one more slice of sensation. That's what he says, and then. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but if you can find that copy of that, you might find it on YouTube, actually, I think.
Yeah, I would imagine that's probably there.
Yeah, go watch it, because it's a cute short film. Cute's not the word, but, it's a quaint short film, and I think it's worth the time. But I would like to see Hellraiser return to form and just show us more of what the Cenobites do to people, and something that would be really like crossing some boundaries. that would really scare people. I think that's the fascination with Hellraiser is the transcendence, the transformation that happens to the characters, and I guess I would like to see more of the Cenobites, and so yeah, that's it.
There's seems like most big franchise things or fandoms. There's kind of a different people have different ideas of what Hellraiser is. I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there that think like Hellraiser Inferno is the best one, and for us that's one of the worst movies. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to sort of poll the fans and say what would be the perfect Hellraiser movie or what makes Hellraiser good.
For me, it's 1 and 2. 1 and 2 are an inevitable double bill for me every time. I mean, if I watch the first one, I usually watch the second one right afterwards because I just see those two movies as just part of a story.
As one whole piece,
right?
Yeah.
And in most cases, the comics are the same way, right? Because they count 1 and 2 as canon, and they use that material, and Leviathan and the Labyrinth and all of that, and where we don't see Leviathan and the Labyrinth ever show up again in the movies.
It's a shame. I would like to see more of that. I would like to see not an explanation, but give us more Leviathan. Give us more of the Labyrinth.
Exploration. Yeah, an exploration of it. That's where I think a series like a HBO kind of series or a Game of Thrones type series of Hellraiser would be a good idea, because you could explore the whole aspects of it, and you could explore more. Because TV is very good nowadays. A lot of the Netflix shows and they're high standards. So I think you could still do a good justice to the material.
And every once in a while, the person who owns the TV rights for Hellraiser will throw some weird advertisement out there just to see if people are interested. That last one he did was like in 2012, and it was a picture of a remote control with like pins in it.
Yeah. Larry Kuppen, one of the producers from Hellraiser 3, I think he keeps trying to make it happen, but again, the budget for one of those episodes of Game of Thrones is in the millions of dollars, and it's hard to gather up that money for something that would be. If anything, I don't think Hellraiser would be mainstream. I would love to see it mainstream, but if you make it mainstream, again, there are limits that have to be imposed on the story, because people are not going to want to see someone get turned inside out or get their skin taken off their face. It's gonna require age restrictions. It's not going to be for everyone.
I don't know. I wouldn't have thought that either. I would have thought that too. But then you look at like the violence in The Walking Dead or the
that's what I was thinking. Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
And Game of Thrones, it seems like the popular shows now are the ones that push the boundaries.
Sure.
Exactly. Sure. Sort of, I was going to say, actually, yeah. I mean, if you look at, like, I was going to say, I know The Walking Dead and Game of Thrones, look at The Sopranos as well, because, I mean, that's pretty violent as well. There's just so many. I think they could do it. I think they could do it. And because there isn't such, you're not as restricted as you are in the cinema. So
right. If you're talking about HBO, sure, HBO or Netflix, I guess they would be able to get away with doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think as well, it would draw a lot of people. It would draw a lot of fans, because then people, no pun intended, but people would be hooked by the
right.
So by what they could do.
Another thing,
I think your pun was intended.
I really hope that at some point, and I know this might be unpopular for some people, but I think most fans out there will agree. I really just want to see Hellraiser, and I hope people don't take this the wrong way. I want to see Hellraiser get out of the hands of the Weinstein Company, because I just don't think that they're doing a good job with it, and I just think if they do a reboot of this movie, or a soft reboot or a remake, call it whatever you want, I just think it's going to start over a new cycle of making one movie that's maybe good, may have Clive Barker involved, but then it's just going to start a new cycle of sequels to milk the franchise again, and I just don't want to see that happen. So that's my other thing. I want to see Hellraiser at some point, like Halloween got lucky. Halloween used to have the rights were with the Weinsteins, and then they let it lapse. It dropped out from their grasp, and now they're going to do another Halloween. I think they're going to bring in Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode.
That's right. Yeah,
they're going to throw away all the continuity from most of the sequels.
Resurrection, Halloween Resurrection. They're actually going to make it the true sequel, and you've got John Carpenter producing. And
it may be good. I'm going to miss Dr. Loomis, but it's got Jamie Lee Curtis in it. As long as they make a good script, let's see what happens.
They're actually going to follow on from the second film, aren't they? As well, which is interesting.
I think so. It's going to be 40 years later, I think.
Wow, wow. Do you know what? I'd like to see that, because maybe they're trying to do something with it rather than just, we'll see what happens.
It's hard to follow the continuity of Halloween movies.
Yeah.
I mean, it does these horror franchises and even all film franchises. Sometimes they just milk it, and the continuity is all over the place. It just
Hellraiser movies a lot of them don't make sense with each other.
No, it is true. It is true.
And just going back to something we did last year, I think, when we were doing the Duels of Blood Volume 1, we did a short series of episodes where we had with us Max Lichter from Pyramid Gallery, and we had the opportunity to look through some treatments and early script drafts, I guess, of the scripts that the Weinstein brothers were looking at for the remake. When I think it was like 2008 or something, they hired a bunch of people to do some script specs for a Hellraiser remake, and most of them were just terrible. And most of them involved some sort of cult, and then there would be someone who would find someone with a box, and then Pinhead would appear, and there would be these cultish figures, and I don't know. It was just terrible. We talked about a few of those. It seemed like a mix between Rosemary's Baby and Hellraiser, and I don't know. Go listen to some of those episodes from the time that we were doing the Duels of Blood Volume 1 with Max Lichter as a special guest, and listen to us talk about those treatments and just see why I think it's necessary for Hellraiser to get out of the grasp of the Weinstein brothers. I know they didn't make those scripts, but they were seriously considering those, and that was the kind of talent that they were going after. So,
and some of the ones they made were equally terrible. I mean, like Hellworld.
That's a bad movie.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that Judgment will come out soon, and I hope that we get to see this new Paul Taylor Pinhead, and we'll give it a shot, I guess. And it was great. It was a great guy to talk to. I love Paul T. Taylor. He's very, very excited about being Pinhead. Like you said, he's one of the only people that's promoting the new Hellraiser. So
I mean, I feel a bit sorry for him, because he's obviously been overshadowed by Doug, and the fans aren't particularly too happy either. But
right, they're not very open to the idea.
I mean, I do feel a little sorry for him. Even though, I mean, Doug's the iconic character.
But I mean, I don't think that Doug. I think it's unfair to compare him to Doug, even though it's going to be inevitable. And
it's a bit like that kind of in the same, not maybe necessarily same act, but it's a bit like the whole Tim Curry and Bill Skarsgård aspect is like someone else taking over, or Jack Nicholson and Heath Ledger. It might not be totally like that, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. We won't be able to judge it until we see it. But
I like those examples that you brought up. I mean, Jack Nicholson and Heath Ledger are totally, extremely different portrayals of the same character, but they both work so well. And Heath Ledger really added a lot to the character. So I know people were like, "Oh, I can't believe they're going to put in Heath Ledger," and it's like, well, he did a great job in the Dark Knight. Yeah. So. Just like Skarsgård in It, I mean, a lot of people love the Tim Curry version of Pennywise, and that's fine. That's close to the book and all that. But definitely, It has been making a lot of waves. It's one of the horror movies that's bringing horror back, It's one of the most
I
successful
think it
horror
will.
movies recently.
I think people
I
get
think it
these
is.
preconceived notions about what a character's supposed to be. Like, you remember, even way back, like Interview with a Vampire, people were so upset that Tom Cruise was going to be playing Lestat. And then the movie came out, and was like, yeah, actually, he did a pretty good job. It was fine.
He did.
Exactly. I think what people need to do is wait to see it and then.
Yeah, I know. It seems like simple advice, but geez.
For a
Yeah, I
movie
mean,
about-
yeah. Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I had the same aspect with The Dark Knight as Heath Ledger as the Joker. I was thinking, how can you top or even get near Jack Nicholson as the Joker? Because Jack Nicholson was perfect as the Joker. But then you see it, yeah, and then you see Heath Ledger and you see the film and you go, you know what, that it's as good, or it's like, you know, it just has so many great things to it that like you have to wait to see it. You know, I mean, I was a bit critical about it, but then saw it and was amazed by it. So, you know, I think, yeah, people just need to give it a chance. And I think Bill Skarsgård was just outstanding, and he gave justice as well. And I think, though, Tim Curry with the original miniseries, I think he was the best thing about it, you know. And and it was definitely flawed, the film, but it had its charms. But then I could watch both and enjoy. I could enjoy both versions. It's like with Tim Burton's Batman and Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight franchises, I can enjoy their versions for different reasons. So, you know, and the thing is, they're both made by kind of visionary filmmakers. So they both have. I think all of them have their flaws and positives, and, you know, they're good and bad in all their aspects. So I think there's always going to be stuff you don't like, and I think I'm going to wait to see Hellraiser Judgment, but I say I'm going to wait to see it, but, you know, it seems to be going further and further away from the original.
It does, and especially in the characters that it introduces and all that. But like you said, I'm willing to give it a shot, and I just hope that whatever happens to Hellraiser in the future, that it involves a return to Clive Barker, a return to production by Clive Barker, a return to original ideas, and a return to a scariness, you know, fascination, sophistication. That's what I want for Hellraiser. So
a return
that's
to
it.
form. Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, I think that as you were saying earlier, you didn't find Hellraiser 2 as scary as such, but I think it was very unnerving, unnerving, and I think it was more of the atmosphere, and it made you feel uncomfortable in your own skin, and which is, I think, the whole point really of it, you know.
Yeah, I like that.
I think that was the whole point, and I think it's just very well layered, and it's I think there's a good film by a good filmmaker and a good script writer just waiting to happen, you know.
That's right.
Well, time will tell, and time will just have to see.
Yeah. It'll come out eventually. I mean, I remember when we were waiting for Deader and Hellworld to come out, and then it came out, I think, on June 7th and September 6th of 2005, I think, or I think that was it. I don't know. But I just remember talking about that with Doug Bradley in Portugal once, and I asked him, do you know anything about Deader and Hellworld? And he was just like, well, you know, he had seen a rough cut of Deader, but he hadn't seen Hellworld at the time, and it's just weird. People, I'm sure that actors get tired of being asked about the movies they're in, especially when it seems like they don't know much about them. They just go there, do their job, and then it's like, all right, when it comes out, it comes out. So we'll see about Hellraiser Judgment, and a happy 30th anniversary, Hellraiser. It's been a great ride.
Yeah, happy 30th anniversary. Yeah.
A lot of cool stuff came out in these 30 years. A lot of comic books and stories and fan fiction and you know, sequels of varying quality. But again, just wanted to remind people that the Arrow Steelbook for Hellraiser is coming out for America soon, and it features that beautiful Mondo art from Matt Ryan Tobin, and also I forgot to add the date of that Lakeshore signing, a vinyl soundtrack signing. It says here that the special 30th anniversary edition of the Lakeshore soundtrack, remixed and remastered, will be signed by Christopher Young at Dark Delicacies in Burbank on the 15th of October, starting at 4 p.m. So,
Yay!
Thank you so much for joining us, Danny. It's great talking to you. We love the contributions you send us and all the news you send us. So it was fun talking to you.
And this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end.
We have eternity to know your flesh.
You can find the show notes for this episode as well as lots of news and features at www.clivebarkercast.com. Leave comments there or get them directly into the podcast by clicking the Send Voicemail tab on the right. Please follow us on Twitter at BarkerCast or at Occupy Midian, like us on Facebook, and join the Occupy Midian Facebook group. You can listen on the site or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, TuneIn, Pocket Cast, Google Play, and Double Twist. Look for our apps in the iTunes Store or Google Play Store. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Please take a couple of minutes to leave us a review on iTunes. It means the world to us and helps us spread the word about Clive Barker. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial fan site and podcast that is not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Films. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans.
Thanks for listening.
So until tomorrow, remember that shopping at home with your phone from the Shop at Home Club makes us happy. We love you, and always smile when you dial. Goodbye.
There, Percy. I know you're sad because the Shop at Home Club is off the air for tonight. But Mommy's got a little surprise for you. Something new. Watch and wear video from New World. That's right, baby. At the end of this movie, there will be some great souvenir offers for us. Caps, T-shirts, satin jackets. Oh, I can hardly wait. What's the movie? It's supposed to be scary, but we've seen scary movies before. Remember the Wicked Witch? This should be a piece of cake. There, Percy. Wasn't that fun? Now for the watch and wear offer. Oh, dear. You need a tissue. Here we go. Percy, have you ever seen such a mess? And the smell in here could raise the dead.
Watch and wear from Hellraiser.
Here comes the watch and wear offer. Come on, Percy, over this way. Let's get to the phone.
Stay chained to the screen, 'cause here's what we have for you. Get hooked on a Hellraiser t-shirt. We want you to hang in there. A Hellraiser thermos or mug. They're great for pouring something tasty down your tonsils. Hellraiser sweatpants and sweatshirts. Perfect attire, even if you're up against the wall. A baseball cap might be just the thing to keep your brain covered. A Hellraiser windbreaker to help keep the chill off your bones. The Hellraiser sports bag, the ideal bag for your favorite things. Satin against your skin. You know you love this satin Hellraiser jacket. And something guaranteed to liven up any dead space on your wall. The Hellraiser poster. Here's how to order. We'll show each souvenir with its price and order number. Call toll-free and use a credit card, or send a check or money order to the address at the end of this offer. Don't forget, you can rewind or freeze your VCR if you need more time to get all the information. Item HRTS, the Hellraiser t-shirt, comes in small, medium, large, and extra large. Keep things warm or cold in the Hellraiser thermos. The Hellraiser coffee mug will help you rise and shine. The Hellraiser sweatshirt comes in small, medium, large, and extra large. The Hellraiser sweatpants, also in small, medium, large, and extra large. Hellraiser baseball caps, one size fits all, even pinheads. Windbreakers from Hellraiser, in small, medium, large, or extra large. Let everyone know who they're playing with. Get a Hellraiser sports bag. Hellraiser satin jackets come in small, medium, large, and extra large. What room would be complete without a Hellraiser poster? If you don't have a credit card, list the order numbers of the items you want, total their prices, and add $3 shipping and handling for the first item and $2 for each item after that. Send a check or money order for the full amount to this address. Call toll-free and use your credit card, or write us with a check or money order. Either way, be part of Hellraiser, or else.